is the Rangers Journal now.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rangers Journal on this Tuesday, the 26th of August. A very happy evening, as it has turned out to be in the last 10-15 minutes. If you know, you know. Welcome to tonight's show. We're going to be talking about Russell Martin and the job he's been doing so far, and whether we think it's any good. Spoiler alert, it's not. And we'll touch a little bit on, obviously, tomorrow's match against Brugge as well. First and foremost, though, I just want to say welcome to John, who's joining us this evening. This is me and John's first time together live. So welcome, John. Thanks for coming on tonight.
Thank you very much. Really good to be here.
Yeah, and Stevie, welcome to yourself. Looking dapper and your away top there.
Good evening, Doug. Good evening, John. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this. It should be good.
Should be a good one. Welcome to everyone in the chat. A couple of comments coming in already, talking about some random team. I'm not really sure what they're talking about, but they are talking about something in an excited fashion. Welcome to everyone in the chat. So get any questions in or comments on Russell Martin if you have them, and we'll pop them out as we go through. Just before we touch on Russell Martin, though, guys, I think it would be a bit remiss of me if I didn't touch on the sort of news from this afternoon, which is that Rangers have apparently finally now agreed a deal with Lille for Hamza Egaman. The deal is apparently worth £10.5 million. So that's in a region of 10 times what we purchased him for, which is obviously in the space of 12 months, on the face of it, a good deal. And apparently, all the sources are saying that the press kit said that this met his release clause, which is something that none of us, I think, had heard a Scooby about until tonight. If that's the case, that would make all the talk that we were holding out for 15+ million to be just Twitter nonsense or something, some such. But we'll not get too much into it. But just, John, to start with yourself, just your quick kind of thoughts on the Egaman deal there, and are you just happy the saga's over?
Glad it's over. Disappointed how it's ended. I think that might sum up the feelings quite well. Always felt like he was going to go this summer. Could have done with him going to be a bit earlier just to let us get into the market, get him replaced quite quickly, get somebody settled in. And I think the way it's ended, not good look on him. It's a real shame because he was such an impressive looking player last season. That would have been good to see him this season. But yeah, glad it's over and let's just move on. Let's get somebody in the door as soon as we can.
Absolutely. Stevie, as I say, they're £10.5 million, 10 times basically what we paid for him. So a good return. Are you hopeful that we can turn that into some good last minute spending?
Yeah, that's got to be done. You know, that really needs reinvested immediately. We've only got 5-6 days left. So yeah, I was a bit surprised like yourself about this release clause. I don't know. To me, it seems like they're trying to save a bit of face, given what happened at the weekend. Really handled poorly, beginning to end. For the players' perspective and the clubs, could have been done a lot better. But yeah, like you say, hopefully that gets reinvested quickly. But obviously, people now know that we're holding that money, so it's going to drive prices up. So it could be a bit tricky. But yeah, I'm disappointed because I really liked him as a player last season. He was so much potential. Like really physical striker, like really kind of fits the mould to me what you want up front. So I'm a bit disappointed to see him go. But given the way it's kind of played out, that type of attitude, you can't have that at the club.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think for me, one of the most disappointing things has just been how it's ended. He was such a popular player. Fans were really behind him from the get-go. The club gave him all that time at the start of the season to settle in. Brought in a Brugge transfer. We brought in an entire coach, seemingly, to help him. And so to have it end on a bit of a sour note is a shame. But no players bigger than the club. He'll go off to have a lovely career, no doubt, and we'll move on. Quick question from Paul. Do we know how much we pay his old club? I can't see it being the 30% as a rumour. This is something I've been looking into, Paul, for the last couple of days because I'd seen that 30% as well. I cannot find any news report of any kind from then or now that mentions that. So I don't think that it's necessarily the case that it's that figure because I just can't find anything to corroborate it now. I'm not a proper journalist. I don't have any behind the scenes knowledge or anything like that. So, maybe it could be obviously this clause has come out of nowhere, but I would imagine there probably is some kind of percentage in there. That's pretty standard for clubs selling young players. You sell them when they're young, get that percentage in. Clubs want to do exactly what we want to do in that respect. So I wouldn't surprise me at all if there is a percentage in there somewhere, but I can't say what it is. And I would have thought 30% would perhaps be a touch on the high side, but I honestly don't know. As I say, I can't find anything to see either which way. So until something more official comes out, we'll just have to let's just assume we've got all the money for ourselves to spend, because that will make us happier. So I can't really help too much on that one, Paul, but I would agree with you. 10% would sound a lot better, 10-15 maybe, but we'll see. Anyway, on to tonight's main topic. As I say, we're here to talk about Russell Martin. Russell Martin, I was trying to think earlier today, what are the best ways to describe Russell Martin's tenure? And I couldn't help but keep coming back to an old 20th century phrase that was developed in American prisons for men walking to, who were being given death sentences, and they would be chastised as they walked down the rows with dead man walking. And as early in days as we are now, it seems to be that kind of is where we're getting to with Russell Martin already. Fans, of course, were not a huge fan of Russell Martin to begin with in a lot of quarters. So he started in a negative from a lot of people's points of view, and he's only cycled backwards from there. So I've got a quick slide to put up just to give us a little taste of sort of Russell Martin so far in terms of signings and, of course, his results. If we start with the signings, John, so we've got, so I say that's the majority of our signings so far. Cortez and Cameron were obviously signed before Russell Martin became a part of the club, so I've not sort of included them. A lot of people have made the fact that, all but one of those signings has come from England. Is that a big issue for you? I've always been a proponent that there's no bad markets, there's just bad signings. But I have seen a lot of people who are really tired of just signing players from England in general, in particular the lower leagues, although when you actually look at it, most of our players have come from Premier League clubs. What's your kind of thoughts on that? And, do you think the signings themselves have been okay?
I think some of the signings look okay. I think early doors, I had a concern about shopping in England again. I think our recent history with that hasn't been good. If we go back to Davies, Dowell, guys like that, as far back as that, it's not been good value. And it's players coming up who just seem to think, I'm coming from the Championship, I'm coming from the Premier League into Scotland. This will be a bit of an easy street for me. And it's never turned out that way. And we've always had those struggles. So that did concern me. What also concerned me was we seem to be looking further down in those leagues. Manny Fernandez from Peterborough and the likes, we seem to be going down the teams a wee bit further as opposed to looking at Southampton's, that kind of Leeds type of team where we maybe shopped in before. It was going further down. So that kind of concerned me especially. I think guys like Nasser Giga looks a good player, looks a really good player. He's had some sticky moments, but looks a really good player on the whole. Aarons and Rothwell are a concern, and I think everybody would probably share that concern around. Aarons doesn't seem confident. He doesn't seem in this system and knows what he's doing. And I think Antman has come in, looked really good in that first game. He's not struck up that relationship with Aarons, and I don't think they're on the same wavelength, and neither of them look as if they're going to thrive right now. So I think some of the individual parts look as if they could be quite good. The collective right now is disappointing, for me.
Yep, Stevie, John talked about the concern about shopping in the lower leagues. My hope was that was a result of their sort of data-driven approach, and that they were finding those starlets before they hit that higher level, and that we were getting in there to get them on the cheap, kind of like we've done with Igaman. Is that the feeling that you get for them, or do you share sort of John's concerns that they were just looking for cheaper players rather than necessarily the best players?
Say a wee bit of column A and a wee bit of column B. I kind of echo what John said there about I'm quite impressed with a few of the signings, but we are somehow far less than the sum of our parts. Mention the system. What system? I don't see a system. You're supposed to have a system that lets players thrive, and that's not happening. at all, unfortunately. Personally, I would have liked to see more Scottish signings. I know we've got Lyle Cameron, but he's not Russell Martin signing. And to me, he's been the kind of standout so far. I think him and Curtis have done really well when they've been given a chance. I mean, what does Curtis need to do? He keeps coming off the bench and scoring goals. He's actually delivering. But I think this is actually something that's been part of our club for a few years. We don't look domestically. And I think when Martin, Thelwell, Purdy, they've came in and thought we can just come in here and scoosh this league, and that does not happen. You know, we've seen it doesn't happen for the previous transfers we've had to down south. I'm not writing the new guys off at all. I think the standards have increased and improved, and like you said regarding the data, hopefully that will come to fruition with like guys like Fernandes, who I think has got a lot of potential. He's a rough diamond, but you know, physically he looks apart. So I wouldn't write off the guys they've signed, but I think it needs to be a kind of broader mix of Scottish players getting signed and these guys like Ackman and Gassama. I'd look a little bit more at Scottish players going forward. I don't know if they'll do that. I don't know if that's in their makeup, unfortunately.
Yeah, I have to say, you know, when I looked into the players, I like to look into, you know, all players that we bring in after we've done so, and to me, most of them looked like they had something about them that they could bring to the team. In particular, players like, you know, Sam looked very talented. Mikey Moore I'd seen for Tottenham the season before in the Europa League, so I already had an idea of him, and I genuinely feel, and much similar to how I felt under Clement, to be honest, that the system is stifling the creativity of some of these players. A lot of people have talked about Ant-Man recently, and how, you know, he came kind of flying out the blocks, and then it seemed to get worse each game. You know, I thought he played well in his obviously in the first game. I thought he played well against Dundee, but then he has been a little quieter since. So, you know, is it the training? Is it Russell Martin that's causing that problem? Obviously, the other big part of that is the results. I mean, obviously, we've talked about them on pods as we've gone. Russell Martin really has become the king of the draw. Even through the friendlies, we drew more than anything else, and he's becoming the master of the 1-1. John, I was speaking to my dad on the phone earlier today, and he suggested that to try and get a better answers out of him, a journalist should ask him what he thinks his chances are of not getting relegated this season. If he keeps doing these draws, or indeed, given that we're up against Celtic, Hibs and Hearts next, indeed if he loses the next 3 games, that won't be as silly of a potential question for someone to ask him.
No, it won't be. I heard somebody say earlier on about if he keeps going on with the draws, at least we'd have an unbeaten season. I'm not entirely sure how optimistic that is. The results thus far are terrible. I think we all kind of knew maybe from Panathinaikos onwards, the type of performance last week against Bruges was in the post. It was coming. It was just a matter of time. And we saw nothing for me, that even against Motherwell. There was little things there that you thought in the first half, okay, there's some signs there, but we just seemed to be getting overpowered. I mean, it was as if we'd brought this team in, these players in, and they weren't going to fit what we were trying to do. And you could almost see these teams growing into it and say, right, as long as they stay close to us, they'll get something out of these games. And it's like, and we have not got that firepower and that attacking prowess right now to say we'll get goals to bury teams off. So the results, there's a real concern that these results are going to get worse. And I think you know that it's all roads for me are leading to the Hibs game in the Cup, because I think that is going to be a point where I think a lot of people who are maybe on the fence just now are going to break with us if that Hearts and Hibs games go wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Stevie, you know, John touched on the results being poor. The other sort of aspect to this is the performances within those results. People might have a little bit more truck for Russell Martin after 3 draws if they'd been 3 draws that were full of creative football and chances and hitting posts and knocking crossbars, and that was a deflection, they got a sneaky draw, St Mirren held in, they're well organised, that can happen. But it's not been that. It's been, you know, as John said, there's slow football. Someone in the comments mentioned, you know, we're getting players getting marked out of that because we're not moving the ball quick enough. There just doesn't seem to be the green shoots there that fans need to grasp onto something, to even give him the opportunity of time to improve, as he says, that, you know, to get to this magical clicking point that he talks about.
Yeah, I fully concur. I mean, I really wanted them to succeed, but there's literally nothing that I'm seeing. I think the only improvement that I've seen this season is in Jack Butland. Everybody else, they've done well for a game, and then as he seems to coach them, they seem to lose confidence. It is worrying. I mean, we've won one game domestically against Alloa, and that was a struggle. I mean, we really toiled up until we scored the fourth goal in the injury time to actually put it to bed. It's no good enough. It's nowhere near good enough for the level of player that we've got to be struggling in these games. It's just unacceptable on so many levels. I mean, you've kind of listed all the kind of problems there. Half the players look like they're dragging a bag of cement behind them. They don't move. They don't do the fundamentals at corners. They're not really working cohesively. They're just, it's like you say, if you were looking at it and thinking, okay, we've really went for it, we've been unlucky, we've created loads of chances. We're not defending and we're not attacking. It's hard to make I don't know. I just think it's hard to make an argument for Ross Martin. Really, there's nothing. I mean, maybe it'll change. If he pulls it out of the bag tomorrow night and on Sunday against Celtic, maybe he gets a lot more time. But the odds on that happening are astronomical. I can't see that, to be fair. But yeah, it's just nothing seems to be improving. I think it's going the other way, and I also think his demeanour's changed after the Motherwell game. I don't actually think he believes he can do this job. He's getting quite defensive and snappy about stuff because it's not going his way. And I think like Halliday kind of picking apart his tactics, I think that's actually got to him. And you need to really have it, up here. I saw Ruth kind of interviewed a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about Gerrard being the Rangers manager and how you really need to have mettle. You really need to be tough to do this job. And I can't see Russell Martin lasting much longer. The way it's going, there's no enough, like you say. In fact, there's no enough anything to see this actually progressing. It's going to have to be a hell of a turnaround for him to kind of pull it out of the bag.
Absolutely. I think, like kind of John touched on, the only positive you could say for Martin is that he's consistent, consistently poor. John, we've got a question here I'm going to bring in from the comments here from Daniel. Do you think player power is an issue within the dressing room? Are the players making Russell Martin's job harder? There have been some rumours of player unrest. There was some rumours a few weeks ago that he'd had some disagreements with players. I saw rumours the other day on Twitter that Tav had a Ferguson versus Le Guin moment shouting at him after the St Mirren game. How true that is, I don't know. This is just a random thing on X. So do you think there's any ructions behind the scenes, perhaps? Is that maybe why the players aren't getting on board?
Something's not right. And you've got players in there who are now on their third and fourth manager. Some of this stuff is carried over. If you look at Butland, Tav, Suter, Raskin, they're on third, fourth manager now. And some of these things have tracked across. That dressing room doesn't seem a happy and a healthy place to be. Is it player power? Not sure. Do they like the manager? I think we've went to this part already where he kind of went after them after the Motherwell game. And I think we all kind of said that seemed a bit too early to be coming out with that. He's had a bit of a go at Raskin in terms of how has his head been turned. He went full in on Igaman, rightly so, on Sunday, but it could have been kept behind closed doors. So players will get wise to that. Players will start to think, I'm not sure if I like this, and I like how things are getting out in the open so easily.
Absolutely. Have you been surprised, Stevie, at all by there's been kind of so many of these little stories about ructions with players? When Russell Martin came in, certainly one of the things I'd read about him was that he was meant to be a really good man manager, and that players in previous clubs apparently really loved him and were totally on board, and we seem to be having the complete opposite experience.
Yeah, I mean, I read the same thing. Like Southampton players are supposed to absolutely back him to the hilt. But see, just touching on the Igaman again at the weekend, I think that was really not to labour the point, but that could have been just, he felt something in the warm up. We're not going to risk him. Everybody knows he's going to leave potentially in the next few days. That's it. To me, I think it showed real poor leadership for him to come out and say what he did. Because essentially he's deflecting the result, or he's trying to deflect the result to make himself look better. So look at Igaman, he's really at it, or he's been very unprofessional, which he was. There's no doubt about that. But in that moment, he's the Rangers manager and he's got to think about, the whole club. People are saying there's a release clause, so he's not actually devalued him, but he has devalued him in that moment. He's basically saying he's not a good professional, and that's going to only strengthen Leo's position for negotiations. And I think he's thrown him under the bus to try and protect himself and make himself look better, and it's not a good look. Like I said, Egerman's been well out of order. I'm not disputing that, but that to me shows weak leadership again. Aside from he makes strange decisions in games as well. There's a big list of stuff that I disagree with what he's done. But that was kind of like the tip of the iceberg with Egerman. I don't know. It struck me as not a Rangers manager. No, he shouldn't have been doing that. I guess, obviously growing up, Walter Smith was a manager, and that's like the proper yardstick for me. And he would never have done that at the weekend. That's poor leadership.
John, another sort of point from the comments that I've seen around on X and various places. Dado's saying here, Thelwell needs sacking if he can't get players in. I've seen a lot of people, not just Thelwell, but also the chairman. I've seen a lot of folk suggesting that if Russell Martin goes, that they should go as well. What's your kind of thoughts on that? Like, to me, that feels a little bit baby out with the bathwater. I think fair enough. These people, well, maybe the chairman less so, but the higher ups are also new to the team, new to the club, so they're learning as well. And perhaps, they've obviously made this choice for Russell Martin. Should they get a second chance to try and appoint someone new to try and correct their mistake, or are you on board with the folk that kind of just saying a clean sweep?
No, I wouldn't go that far just yet. I think they have questions to answer. I was always of the opinion that this was an important summer for Thelwell, probably more than anybody, because he was coming in as the man in charge of the football structure, signings and things like that. So I always felt that if we take Josh Mulligan as an example, we were all seeming as if that deal was there. We all thought, right, good younger Scottish player can definitely add something to the team, and that gets pulled. That's not a good look when you then look at Max Aaron's performances and say, should we have done that? And that's on him and what he's done. So if I'm the owners from the 49ers and Andrew Kavanagh, I'm asking questions of him and Patrick Stewart to say, there's apparently been 7 interviews and this was a lengthy process. What actually went on here to make this decision and make sure it doesn't happen again?
Yep, I think that's pretty fair. Welcoming in the boss here, Scotty, coming in to join us on this wonderfully positive chat this evening. How are you doing, Scotty?
Aye, not bad at all. I was watching a penalty shootout on the telly, so my apologies for the lateness.
Oh, was it exciting?
How did it finish?
I don't know. The wee team for the middle and Aware went through, so that's good to see underdogs going through on it.
Always a plus. So we've been talking about Russell Martin, and we were just touching on comments from the chat there that not just Russell Martin, but perhaps the whole leadership team need to go, including Thelwell and Patrick Stewart, whose name I totally didn't forget earlier. What's your thoughts on that? Are you clean sweep, or do you think it's a case of no, get rid of the manager and they get an opportunity to then correct their first mistake?
Well, I don't think we're going to get. I don't really think we're going to get what we want just now. I think potentially if the next few weeks after the international break doesn't go away, then either it's going to get stronger and stronger because there is that culture just now, Doug. In terms of the kind of the bigger picture and looking at Thelwell and Purdy and all the rest of it, I really do think when it comes to letting Coppin leave, I think that was a mistake. I think Coppin should have been retained because you look at players we've sold. We've sold Jeff Day and Egerman for about 16.5 million reported tonight. Pure profit. All right, fine. They weren't the great players, etc. They didn't get his trophies and whatever else in the bag. But in terms of being a trading player model club, I think Coppin was making the right signings and I think he was learning, and I think not signing Josh Mulligan was a huge mistake. I think again that was daylight snobbery on Rangers' parts to Scottish players. Again, bring up Lawrence Shankland yet again, another one that's been missed. Lewis Ferguson, Lennon Miller. There's players all over the shop that Rangers haven't signed because we think we're better than them. And it's a pile of nonsense, to be honest with you, because we've now got a guy in charge we've been promised fast flowing attacking football. But team's going to outrun the opposition. I've yet to see that. The only time I have seen it was the Poulsen game. I think that was fair. I think that's a fair kind of assessment. We've not done it. Really, I think we're lucky. We scraped past Panathinaikos. We should, if Panathinaikos had the quality Club Brugge had, would have been out in the first round. Do think getting to the playoffs was the bare minimum expectation. Fair play to Russell Martin for managing that. But in terms of league titles and competing and doing everything that we wanted to see this year with this takeover, I feel as if the signings have been rotten, apart from Gassama. I don't like many of the signings. Thought Rothwell would have been much better than what we've had. It's just the championship players, and they don't cut the mustard up here. Many times have we spoke about it in terms of Todd Cantwell and all the rest of it. The only one that really pulled off was Connor Goldson. He was playing the Premiership at the time. I think that's also a fair assessment. So the signings haven't been good. The manager's tactics haven't been good enough. There was dressing room unrest because you can dress this Agaman stuff up all you want. I don't like how Russell Martin's completely throwing players under the bus. But again, am I willing to give it time? Aye, because we've not really got an option just now because the 49ers are only going to remove him anytime soon. Unless it gets to dropping points to Heart and Hibs, Celtic beat us on Sunday, etc., etc. Many times have we seen, Doug, that Celtic are on the ropes with results like tonight and we don't take advantage. I don't think we are going to take advantage on Sunday, if I'm being brutally honest, because I've got no hope and no optimism when it comes to this manager's tactics and style of play so far, because there's not been any evidence. If we'd seen evidence, fine, all for it, but there's not been a slow progression and improvement in performances. Mindset, we're still going a goal down, still reverting to the safety side of things that Russell Martin spoke about. None of that's been fixed. So I'm struggling to get any optimism just now, to be honest with you, mate. Would I like Russell Martin out? Aye, because I didn't want him in the first place.
I think a lot of fans are there as well. Yeah, come on, Stevie.
No, I mean, I just basically said what Scott said before he came on, but I think it's like lose little or lose big, because right now I don't think we're going to finish top of the bottom six. Like, seriously, our form is that bad. I think the ownership have got to be looking at this and thinking, pull the trigger, just admit the mistake now and try and save the season, because there's still 35 whatever games to play in the league. I would definitely. You don't want to be reactionary, right? Because we keep sacking managers, but ultimately, this looks like a dreadful, dreadful decision to appoint Russell Martin.
Well, that's the thing. Again, we're saying that with I was talking to my dad earlier on today. About the idea you can't keep sacking managers, but at the end of the day, there comes a point where you can't not sack a manager, and Russell Martin is rushing towards that point. John, I'll bring you in here. Stuart in the chat said, if you don't have the players to play it from the back, don't do it. One of the big concerns about Russell Martin was that he would be another sort of Clement-style stubborn manager who has a system and is going to play it come hell or high water. There was talk that he had learned from mistakes. He said that on, I think it was a Sky Sports interview, his masterclass. He talked about learning from his mistakes. He talked about, in particular, sort of name-checked the dark arts. I don't feel like we've really seen much of that. Maybe a little bit of dark arts stuff, but I don't think I would say there was much more than there was before. Do you think that's ultimately going to be his downfall, that he can't just look at something and go, this isn't working, I want to play this system and I will play that system eventually, but for now I have to do X or Y or Z?
No, he doesn't have it in him. And I think that is just going to be his downfall. And I think it's quite telling when you look at the signings we've made. So many attacking midfielders, wingers, which I appreciate. We probably all spent last season saying we need wingers, and we were badly short there. But you're building out from the back. One of the first couple of things you want to do is have a solid centre back who can defend and a solid centre back who can play with the ball. And Giga, we've got somebody who can cover reasonably his passing, but you don't look as if we think that back four is ready to go to defend or to play out from the back. So if you're going to start from that point, build from there out, and it just seems as if it's he's not focused in that defence. He's not focused on being solid and structured in it. He's went, get the forward play sorted, get the winger sorted. And it's going to be his downfall. There's just no other way around that, because you couldn't, somebody was saying put to me is you couldn't keep Wayne's at a close right now with that defence. So it would just get worse.
I like that as a phrase. I might start using that one. John's disagreeing with Stevie. Thinks we'll be second regardless. One thing I will defend Stevie with, John. You've said Celtic don't look much better. They've got 3 wins out of 3. So it doesn't really matter if they've looked better or worse. It's points on the board, and they're still getting them. And that will be the big issue, I think, at the end of the day. But we've touched a little bit on Russell Martin, and we've touched a lot on Russell Martin's style of play and the stubbornness that comes with that. Obviously, we've got the big game coming up tomorrow night. As much as we've enjoyed results this evening, there's probably a good chance that the other side will get their revenge tomorrow. We've got 3-1 down, a big mountain to climb, because Brugge are a really good team. It's not an impossible mountain. We were 3-1 up against Fenerbahce, and they pulled us back to penalties. So, it's totally doable, but it's whether or not you have the faith in this team at this moment to do it. I've got a couple of things I've pulled from I think it's uploading the new slide. Try again. There we go. I've pulled from the match. Shout out to the money men of the journal who got us Y Scout, which gives geeks like me all sorts of exciting stuff to pour over all afternoon. And from that, I've pulled a few things about the first leg and things I think that we need to improve on if we're going to get any kind of result in that game. So the first thing I've kind of got here is stuff about passing from the first game, but then also just sort of some passing stats in general that I covered in one of the pods earlier. So I'll come to you first, Scotty. And I'm just going to touch on the general passing at first, because this is the big thing for me that I think is a part of the problem. I've got a bunch of passing stats there. The numbers themselves aren't necessarily that important, but if you look at the wee arrows, if they're up, it means the stat is better than it was last year / over the 2 years that we won a title and got to a European trophy. And if the arrow's down, it means that it's smaller, and there's one of them where they're roughly the same. And when you look at that, we're making more passes, we're making more back passes, and we're making more lateral passes. We're making less long passes, and we're making less progressive passes. We are making slightly more forward passes, but it's not a big jump. To me, Russell Martin's come in and basically just upped a lot of the stats that we really didn't need upping, because we already have all the ball. We already can pass it around the pitch pretty much happily, because teams will sit and be organised and just let us do that and just crush the ball when we come close to them. And he's not been bringing in the stuff that he was meant to be, that was going to be making the difference. Dynamic passing, moving players about by having extra men in places, the deep inverted fullbacks to allow the midfield to spread, to push up the attack. We seem to have a big gap between our midfield and attack. What have you made of sort of the actual play that Russell Martin's installed thus far, or if anything that you've seen, and what do you think is the biggest problem?
First of all, what we've seen is it's absolutely terrible to watch to begin with. Right, there's the Panathinaikos game. I seen Aaron's playing as an inverted fullback at one point, and I remember he played a one. Oh no, it was Tav actually. Tav played a 1-2 with somebody in the middle of the park. Seen Giga do it, and that's good football in terms of progressing the ball forward, because essentially you're getting past a man. I've not seen it since that game, that tactic being used, or that pattern, or pattern of play, whatever you want to call it. I'm more an eye test guy than what I'm of any of this stuff, you know that. But in terms of, if I can quickly get back to Sunday, Tavernier made a difference when he came on because he started playing progressive passes forward, chipping the ball into the box, making people move, started winning corners. I mean, Rangers, let us sink in, lads. Rangers' first corner didn't come until the 75th minute on Sunday. Right? We've usually you could normally bet Rangers 8+ corners in the first half. Never mind getting your first corner of a match in the 78th minute. So that proves to you statistically that it's not working. But midfield play 20 minutes away from each other. They need to send a football and a taxi to pass the ball to one another. It's not working. Lyle Cameron's the only one with pass marks in the middle of the park this year. Mo Diamondi's regressed. Nico Raskin has definitely regressed. Joe Rothwell's not good enough. Not saying enough for Asgard, but I can tell he's not a striker. Gassama's the only kind of bright light. Back to the question, Doug, in terms of the style of play, it's crap. It's not good enough. It's not working. We need to go through some pain in the beginning. Like I said in my last answer, the pain in the beginning needs to be worth it. And there's no signs that it's going to be worth it. All the signs point to the pain's going to continue. This has been a moments team we've had for the last 2 years now. And we're not even that anymore. You know, you're not even relying on Igaman. I know his name will be mud in the comments just now, but you're not even relying on Igaman coming up with something, Tom Lawrence shooting from outside the box, or something like that happening. So I'm struggling with this, and as far as I'm concerned, we're at the Champions League. If we can do anything tomorrow night, even get a draw to get a bit of pride back, fine. We're out. And the big problem with me is with this style of play, Doug, is the central midfield and the connection between the forward areas. We only seem to really connect to any sort of chemistry between left back and left midfield. Max Aarons doesn't get a clue. I don't know how many Tavernier replacements we've signed, and it's just not worked. I know folk in the comments again have got their own thoughts on Tav, but Tav's a better right back than Max Aarons, even at 34, 35-year-old. We can dress it up all we want. Max Aarons is another championship fullback that's using Rangers as a stepping stone to get his career back on track, and it's not really working just now. So for me, the midfield need to get closer to the strikers. The strikers need to hold the ball up better. If none of that's going to happen, give ball to Gassama, because that's all we've done so far.
Absolutely, I think you're totally right there. Gassama absolutely has been the shining light so far. I'll come sort of up the stories, as it were. I'll come to John next. One of the things that strikes me when I'm looking at those numbers there, if you look at Bruges' passes, they've got nice kind of even numbers between their defence to the midfield, which if you look at sort of broader stats, or you're used to looking at stats, you'll find it's pretty common. And the percentage at the higher end of the pitch is smaller because that's your action end where you're making your quick passes, crosses, and scoring. When you contrast that to ours, you know, a huge majority of our passing is happening in the middle of the pitch, but we've also got a very high amount of passing in the attacking area, which again, these are numbers backing up what the eyes are telling you as well, in that we're just knocking it about the place. We're not actually getting that penetration. We're just knocking it around, and it's taking players like Gassama, who, you know, when he's exciting, he's like Kent. Kent would get on the ball and drive, and Gassama gets on the ball and drives, and in the early amount I've seen, even more so than Kent, he'll bulldoze his way past players as well, or through goalkeepers, as we saw against Bruges. What's your thoughts on kind of the type of play and the issues that Scotty touched on there?
It's too slow. There's no pace to what we're trying to do. You look at some of the movements, some of the places that players are moving to, and some of the passes. You can kind of think, right, okay, I maybe get what they're trying to do, but it's too slow. So by the time the passes are made and somebody's in position, they've got nowhere else to go with that second pass. It's just go back the way. Those stats, looking at everything going on in the middle of the park and that percentage up front, how many chances are we then creating with that 27% in the final third?
Not as many as you'd think.
No, it's not. So it's not being converted into anything. It's probably going for the middle, final third, back to the middle, and then it's looking less at the back because it's such a high line we've got. There was a point, Panathinaikos game. I know they were down to 10 men, but our entire outfield players were in their third of the half. You thought, even at that point, if somebody springs on us with any kind of pace, we're lost. There's no getting back. So the passing that's going on there isn't leading to anything, and that's concerning.
Absolutely. Stevie, I'll bring you in. Obviously, a lot of good points made so far. The kind of final thing that I wanted to highlight from this that I'll sort of serve to you. I've highlighted a sort of a wee string of 3 players there, and that's Suter, Temegoma, Tagasima. That's those 2 combos, so Suter, Temegoma, and Megama Tagasima. That forms, the best bulk of our progression of passing. And ultimately leads to getting our goal. Obviously, that was the ball; those were the balls that went out, and then crossed in for it was Megama crossing in for Danilo. On contrast, when you're looking at the broader stats, there's so little happening on the right hand side, with between Aarons and Ant-Man, or Giga Aarons and Ant-Man. We seem to have like Mega must come in and he's hit the ground running, I think, and it looks like he's going to be a decent player if he carries on that way. Do you think we've got a bit of an imbalance right now? Is that solely down to Aarons, for example, or is there more to it?
No, it's definitely a factor. To get Aarons his due, he's not played a lot of football in 2 years, so I don't want to write him off yet. He might still come good. But you've mentioned the kind of the combination there between Suter, the left back, and then obviously the goal. I mean, it was just simple football. Get to the byline, good delivery, goal. You know what I mean? It's that straightforward. Football is not complicated. And as the guys have kind of covered there, all the passing that they're doing, it's just possession with no intent. There's no incisiveness. There's no real threat. It's turgid. It really is difficult to watch. Do the simple things. But going way back to what John said before about the defence, there's no platform, there's no foundations. Every single decent Rangers team in my lifetime, and I wasn't born yesterday, have had a good defence. You know what I mean? That's your platform. You have that solid backline, and then you play in front of that and you build. The fact that Martin's not identified that he's got to have a decent defence, to me, is just a dereliction of duty. I don't think you'd be a manager and not understand that you have to have a good defence to have a successful football team. That's an imbalance. I mean, there's so much you could list that's wrong with Rangers right now. But yeah, I take your point. There's not enough happening on the right, but that's a more general problem than just like Max Aarons.
Absolutely, and I'll throw up this slide just very quickly, because I think this comes off that point that Stevie's made there about defending. This I was looks at the duels that happened in that first leg and the losses, i.e., when players lost the ball. I think you get similar issues there. Rangers losing the ball down one side way more than the other. When it comes to our duels, though, Gassama is right up there at the top. Again, he's the one that's trying to make things happen. You often find your more creative players will be your players that will lose the ball the most often, or that their passing accuracy will be that little lower than you maybe expected to be. And it's because they'll try the more difficult pass. They'll look for the more difficult ball, or in Gassama's case, will run and attack players. And I think some of those stats reflect that. But the thing that, as I say, I think really comes out of this again is how ours are very kind of structured and that to one side or another, whereas Brugge's set a lot more sort of random, which you kind of would expect. And again, they've got much more balance across these numbers. It's not something I want to dig in too much into with the time we've got left. But Scotty, what do you think is the main thing that we need to improve on for this second game? We've sort of talked about obviously the negatives, so try and or in fact, rather than improve on, try and pick out one thing that we're not horrendous at that we could use to try and get I know that's an impossible question, but what's the best of the worst that we can try and use to get something out of this game tomorrow?
Just get the ball to Gassama. Short answer. Gassama. Hopefully we get some space. If we can get some space, then Antman and Gassama can cause some problems. Apart from that, Lyle Cameron maybe comes into the box and causes some issues. Don't know who'll start up front tomorrow night because seeing all sorts of stuff today about Dessers leaving and we know Wigerman's away, and that leaves us with Danilo, and Danilo's not really been up to it so far. Does that goal last week give him a bit of confidence getting into it? It's an awful lot of questions, to be honest with you. There's more questions than there is answers just now, and the only people who can answer it is the manager and the team on the park.
Absolutely. John, Scotty touched there, obviously up front. We've just now sold a striker. Even if we had sold Ingerman, he wasn't going to be travelling anyway. I'm not 100% sure where Dessers is fitness wise, and obviously Danilo just he's not really been on it yet. I'm a big proponent, and I put in the lowdown that went up earlier today. I suggested that we should try putting Finlay Curtis up front. The boy's got quite an obvious eye for a goal. He's got that youthful exuberance. He gives it a go. And also, to me, the fact that is more naturally a winger, perhaps there's some movement options between him, Antman and Gassama in terms of switching about and maybe trying something. Would you throw the young lad in? Do you think there's any harm to it? Have we got anything to lose?
It would be my curveball selection. Said it even at the weekend. I think he's the best finisher that we've got right now. So if we're going to make limited numbers of chances, we need somebody that we can be confident is going to take it. And I think he's the one guy you say one chance he would take it. I think if we get any space, his running power could be worthwhile for that, where we do have an option of going and switching it up and being a bit more direct. I think we need to be more on the front foot in terms of getting it to Antman quicker. And the one thing I've seen is we're too slow. As soon as that ball's into Aaron's, Antman is looking for that run behind, and we're not finding that pass quick enough. So, yeah, I think Curtis going through the middle would be a great shout.
Maybe I'm going too far for Russell Martin would laugh in my face for suggesting common sense. Stevie, we've got a suggestion for a starting 11 from Paul. What do you think of that? Any changes you'd make?
Let me see.
Got Butland, Tav, Giga, Suter, Megoma, then Raskin, Diomande, and Asgard, Gassama, Antman, and Dessers.
It looks like a decent team, but I agree with John. Curtis has got to start. If Curtis doesn't start tomorrow night, that's it. Martin's away for me. I will not accept it. He's got to play me. He scored the first goal of the season, absolute blinder. He's Panathinaikos. He came off the bench against Alaba, got him out of jail there. He came off the bench again on Sunday, got him out of jail there. I mean, how many times does this boy have to deliver to get a start? I'd be happy to see him maybe playing in support of the striker or even in midfield, because his aggression, you saw it in the training videos in pre-season, he reminds me like an old-fashioned Rangers player, somebody that actually really wants to be there and understands what it means to play for the club, even at 18. He's got a great attitude. He's got to be in there. But it's a decent team. But my best tactic for tomorrow night is prayer. That's
Prayer.
what I hope I've got.
Yeah, we may need a bit of that. What about John here suggesting throwing Gentles in there? Works hard, gets himself in the box. Can't be any worse than Danilo. Would you go as far as to give him a go? Scotty, do you want to take that?
Yeah, mate, cool. Josh Gentles, I don't know. Depends if you're throwing in a towel and putting all your chips down for Sunday, then I would give him a game. Is he any worse than Danilo? Really? I doubt it, to be honest with you. Curtis is a good shout to start tomorrow night. Definitely a good shout. I wouldn't be against it. I really wouldn't be against it. I'm not holding out much hope because I think it's a foregone conclusion that we're out in our backsides, to be honest with you, mate.
Yep. On that point, John, I think most fans are probably of the opinion that, regardless of how we get on tomorrow, we'll end up coming up short. And the one positive from Russell Martin's point of view is probably that they're not going to be quite furious because we've got the Europa League sitting there. We all really love the Europa League because we've had such a good time there in the last few years. And I think a lot of people, even before the season started, might have said that we weren't quite ready for the Champions League anyway. So given that he's kind of got that going in his favour, is the performance tomorrow night more important than the result?
Yes, because I think we need to see something now. If we lose tomorrow night, it's not totally unexpected. But if he can come up with something that says we look a bit more solid defensively, we maybe change something that's right. He pulls something out the bag. We don't expect him to change. We don't expect these performances to change. So if he does something different and we get a bit better defensively, we look a bit better in the wide areas of strikers, something happens. I think that gives us a wee bit more to look at over the result.
Absolutely. I thought there you were going to say it's not the end of the world, and that wouldn't have been a good
choice.
That wouldn't have been a good choice of words given the last few days. Stevie, let's say we go out tomorrow and we put in a good shift and it's a good performance, regardless of whether we win or lose. And let's be super optimistic and say we managed to get a victory at the weekend. They're knackered and feeling sorry for themselves, so we managed to squeeze it. We managed to pull off, let's just say, a tight 1-0. Even at that point, is there enough goodwill left for Russell Martin? Can he redeem himself in any way short of managing to somehow get himself to the end of the season and having actually won something? And even then, do you think there'll still be detractors? Is he already too far gone?
Yeah, probably. But obviously, if he wins, if he beats Celtic at Ibrox, no fun game, then yeah, your dead man walking gets a stay of execution for a wee bit longer. But I don't know. It would probably be the Rangers thing to do, go out and win the fun game after having such a turgid, dreadful few weeks. And kind of echo your point, I don't think we've got much chance tomorrow night. I think it'll be standard. We'll probably lose an early goal, then go 2 down, mistake at the back or a set piece, and then they'll take the foot off the gas and we'll come back into it. Maybe get a wee bit of pride back, but the game will be done. But yeah, I think the performance is key tomorrow night. They need to show more aggression, more tempo, more movement, just more everything essentially. And if they do that and he goes into Sunday with a bit of a bounce and they can somehow get a win, then yeah, he'll keep his job for a bit longer. But if your auntie had balls, she'd be your uncle, mate. I just can't see it happening.
That's the thing. That's the thing. So, Scotty, let's continue our magical time in this fantasy world where suddenly things start improving. What will he need to show against Hibs and Hearts? So he's done okay tomorrow. He's managed to beat Celtic. How important is it that he then builds on that and beats Hearts and Hibs and convincingly?
He needs to start to. We need to be able to start seeing what he's trying to do, what they're doing on the training pitch. Every time you see a training video coming up for the official social media channel, it's just them all kind of running about with a ball getting passed between them. I'm no football coach, so I don't know what they're doing or why they're training it. But if that's a pressing drill, then I want to start seeing them press to begin with. Just need to win. They just need to win. But you'll be able to tell with the type of win, Doug, whether you're papering over the cracks or whether you're starting to see something fruitful. And you're starting to see all this chat that he's getting is actually starting to turn into action and results. So very much a wait and see. But if it's just a nitty gritty couple of wins, then you're just delaying the inevitable for me. We need to start seeing some of this fantastic training that he's putting on, getting put into good use. And we need to start seeing it work.
Absolutely. I think 100% there. So I think we've covered quite a lot tonight. Russell Martin, not in a good place with the fans, not in a good place with the club, not in a good place with the team. And this is a massive month for him now. If it's not already too far gone for him, I think this month could well be the definitive answer as to what is going to be the outcome of Russell Martin's Rangers career as manager. I'll just finish off. There's a couple of questions I sort of tagged near the beginning. So we'll just finish off with those. The first one's half a question. So Daniel's saying, I hear the Dessers and Barami may also be subject to bids. Yes, both of those are correct. There's interest back in from Dessers from Italy. and in fact, both Italy for both of them actually. And the fingers crossed, it does appear like they'll probably be sorted out soon, because ideally, if they can get sorted out, we can then go and purchase replacements. So yes, there are clubs interested in making inquiries about both of them. Very quick question to each of you, Stevie. Miovski or Vardy, who would you take?
Miovski, definitely,
Miovski.
in a heartbeat.
John?
Miovski.
Scotty?
Vardy every day of the week. Every single day of the week for that guy's leadership skills, his ability to score goals, his experience, his tenacity. I still think at 39-40 he's a better player than Miovski. I don't really think. Anytime I seen Miovski score a goal, he was always running into space. And sorry mate, but we play in a low block. It's not going to happen.
There you go, Paul. It's the thoughts of the guys there. This is an interesting question. Given the sales, obviously, of Jefty and Egerman, RFC's asking, was it a mistake to let Cobham go? He never really got a real budget to improve the team. What would he have done with a better budget? Stevie, I'll come back around to you. Just a quick thoughts on that.
Well, proof's in the pudding, mate. You've kind of already covered it. Jefty and Egerman made what, £16 million profit or £17 million profit, and what the outlay was. So yeah, he looked like he really knew what he was doing. So, but with new ownership, they're always going to just clear the decks. Rightly or wrongly, that relationship was never going to work. So I'm sure he'll do well wherever he ends up. But he looks like he's done good business for us at a very difficult time.
Your thoughts, John?
Yeah, same. Wouldn't have been the first one out the door for me. And as much as he's not on form, we'll no doubt make a profit and deal as well.
And Scotty?
I think it was a mistake, being honest with you. Dan Purdy's got a great track record with Fedrai and Williams on, obviously, the Everton podder. They believe it will work out for Purdy eventually, but I think we could have been doing with Cortez's experience. With Cobham's experience in that department of the league, because the signings so far have been awful.
Yeah, I think what we've seen thus far, Cobham, he came in as someone who had a lot of experience with youth and young players, and I kind of feel like the best signings he brought in were the younger players, and those are kind of what we're seeing the outcome of now. But yeah, so thank you, all the guys in the chat for your questions this evening and all your comments and thoughts on Russell Martin. As I say, just as a summary of this evening's events, a great start to the pod with that little team in their penalty shootout. And Russell Martin is not in a good place. He doesn't seem to be going anywhere good fast. And the team really needs to pick things up really quickly if we're going to give him any kind of more rope before he hangs himself. So just remains for me to thank the three guys for joining me this evening. Thanks again to everyone in the chat for joining us and all your comments. Please keep watching. We've got more stuff throughout the week for you. We'll have pre and post match for tomorrow night. More stuff coming in on the pods each weeknight, and on Friday the news show on Friday afternoon will be extra worth tuning into, as it will be live at the same time as the Europa League draw, which I suspect we will probably be quite interested in. So we will bring you the teams that Rangers get, if indeed that is the outcome, live as they happen. So do tune into that one. Loads of exciting stuff happening in the week, and Rangers Journal will be there for all of it, because every night is a Rangers Journal night. Thanks, guys.